Hello and welcome to The Print. Donald Trump and Joe Biden went head to head at the first TV presidential debate ahead of the elections in November. And today I have with us Meera Shankar, former ambassador to the US, who actually served in DC from 2009 to 2011 during the Barack Obama administration, and even interacted with Joe Biden when he was serving as vice president. She's here with us today to speak on this debate and sort of analyze the diplomatic implications. Ambassador, thank you for joining us today.
Welcome. It's my pleasure.
First up, very quickly, when you watched the debate, what did you think the diplomatic implications might be?
Well, firstly, I think that the US is incredibly polarized politically. I think that comes across very clearly because on every issue, whether it is the economy, whether it is immigration, whether it is climate change, or whether it is foreign policy, there's a huge gulf in the position between the two sides. And beyond the differences in issues, there's a level of personal acrimony and invective, which is something new, perhaps triggered by this age of social media. The diplomatic implications will be different for different countries. I think if Joe Biden emerges the winner, then there's likely to be continuity of the existing policy. But if President Trump emerges as the winner, we are likely to see changes in many aspects, including trade, including policy towards Ukraine, policy towards China, maybe policy towards Israel to some extent. And depending on what perspective a country has, they either look with the possibility of a Trump win with apprehension, or they are a little more inclined towards it. So Europe is extremely apprehensive about a Trump presidency because, he has said that he will end the war in Ukraine and he will not provide aid to Ukraine. So Europe has been trying to Trump-proof, if you will, the policy on Ukraine by agreeing to use the interest on the frozen Russian assets to provide Ukraine with long-term loans. So they think that that will be one way of Trump-proofing the policy on Ukraine and for Europe to continue on its own. I don't know how feasible that would be, but they're clearly very concerned. With regard to Russia, perhaps Russia might be more, positive about a Trump presidency for the same reason, that Trump might be more open to negotiations in Ukraine to end the war there, whereas the current administration has taken the view that they are there in it for the long haul and will support Ukraine, whatever. So that's one difference that you can see clearly.
If I may interrupt,
the second would...
Sorry, if I may interrupt,
Sure.
With regard to the Modi government, they've been quite often saying that no matter who comes into power, India, the Modi government has a good relationship with Democrats and Republicans. But of course, we saw the great bonhomie between Trump and Modi. How do you think the Modi government was maybe not just watching this debate, but seeing how the presidential election campaigns have been progressing?
Well, I think at some level, India, is on a strong footing in its relationship with the US, because irrespective of Republicans and Democrats, I think they want to strengthen the strategic partnership with India. But there are differences and nuances between the two sides, which could impact us. I see that, Trump was tougher on China and Pakistan. Biden has continued the tariffs which Trump has imposed and imposed tighter restrictions on high technology exports to China, including from third countries. But he's been more nuanced, basically saying we don't want an inadvertent conflict with China. So we want to try to stabilize the relationship with China. Now, Trump has said that he will impose punitive tariffs beyond those already, imposed on all Chinese imports to the United States. Of course, he's also said that he will impose 10% tariffs across the board for all countries. So that will obviously impact India because there will be a 10% tariffs on all our goods. Secondly, his very restrictive immigration policy might also impact our IT companies, especially at a time when, because of two reasons, the constraints in demand in the West and the technological churn because of artificial intelligence, you're seeing a slowing down of the growth that they were experiencing. So if there is a further tightening of visas during the Trump presidency, and our experts find it more difficult to move to the US to actually undertake and fulfill contracts, then you might have a situation where it eats into the competitiveness of our companies a little more, and they will have to devise ways around that. I think the third area of concern that I would have would be, apart from the tariffs which Trump has promised to impose and the likely tightening of visa policy, the third aspect is that Trump has been very clear that he wants to sell. He does not want to share technology with other countries. And when he was president, the Defense Technology and Trade Initiative, which had been set up under Barack Obama, really came to a standstill because for 2 years, no meeting was held of the group, since Trump's view was, why don't we just sell them the weapons? Why do we want to share technology with them? So if the same view prevails, then it introduces a degree of uncertainty about two of the major strategic initiatives which have solidified India-US relations in recent years. And that is the Defense Accelerator Program, under which you're having joint production of the GE F414 engine, along with HAL in India, and all the other initiatives in the emerging and critical technology space. So it puts a question mark there.
On all things. If I could come back to the aftermath of the debate.
But yes, I mean, to respond to your question, I think that there is some ideological affinity between our government and conservative governments all over the world, including Trump. The example is also Prime Minister Meloni in Italy. And so there is a certain ideological affinity. But I think the relationship is determined beyond that. It's determined by national interests on both sides. And of course, given the possibility of changes in US policy, whereas we have continuity, we have to see how the relationship evolves. I mean, under Joe Biden, you could expect continuity in the relationship and an effort to flesh out some of these strategic initiatives. Under Trump, I don't say that he may pull back on it, but it's a question mark.
Definitely, because both Democrats and Republicans see India as a counterbalance to China. And I think you're completely right in saying that we might be on strong footing because there are strategic and national security interests at play. And coming back to the aftermath of the debate, you had a lot of these reports and analysts coming out saying the Democrats are in a panic. Some are even wondering whether Joe Biden should withdraw his nomination. Of course, that might be a little difficult because the Democratic National Convention is just less than a couple of months away. But even, I'm sure reports about that had Putin and Xi Jinping smiling. How do you think, at least in the Indo-Pacific, questions about Joe Biden's ability to carry on for 4 years is panning out?
Well, I think it's more the polarization, because Biden has a very good team. He has a solid team of professionals who support him. So, I think it's more a question of the discontinuities in US policy. Say, for instance, climate change, or, for instance, Trump's attitude to NATO, where he had said, NATO has been of no use to us. And, again, for Japan and South Korea, why should we have our troops defending them? They should pay us more for this, or let them go nuclear, that kind of situation, whether, the very carefully crafted regional groupings that Biden has put in place, including the trilateral Japan, South Korea, US grouping, including the Quad. I think, you'll have to see. I mean, by and large, Trump wants to confront China, but he's also made it clear that he's a bit averse to using or continuing initiatives begun by his predecessor. So we have to see how this pans out. I mean, on overall China policy, I think Trump would be less nuanced than Biden and probably tougher.
You spoke about NATO briefly. During the debate, Trump said, we're giving too much money to the Ukrainians. The Biden administration is giving over $200 billion to the Ukrainians. It's a waste of money. And, two key advisors to Trump had just a few days ago said, had reportedly presented a plan to him to end Russia's war with Ukraine, which entailed not supplying Ukraine with any more assistance or aid if it didn't come to the table with regard to peace talks. What does the debate, as well as these recent developments, sort of tell us about Trump's potential approach to the conflict if he comes back to power?
I think he would try to push Ukraine to the negotiating table. I think he would be open to negotiating with Russia. And given that he's very transactional and likes a good deal, he might extract something from the Russians. A sensible thing would be to, try to get some distance between Russia and China in return for negotiations on Ukraine. But will he do the sensible thing, or will it be some other quid pro quo?
And I also wanted to ask about NATO in the past.
Here, I think, as far as India is concerned, we've always been saying that the Ukraine conflict can only be ended through negotiations. So in that sense, I suppose we would welcome steps towards trying to resolve issues through discussions and negotiations.
Yes, dialogue and diplomacy has definitely been a common refrain in all MEA statements about the war, as well as Hamas and Israel. I would assume Trump would take the same line as the Biden administration with the Hamas war, right? The Israel-Hamas war, in terms of putting their weight fully behind Benjamin Netanyahu.
I think more so. I mean, President Biden has been trying to at least pressurize Israel now into agreeing to a ceasefire and return of hostages in exchange for freeing of Palestinian prisoners, eventual withdrawal of Israeli troops fully from Gaza, and negotiations on a two-state solution. So they have been trying to pressurize Netanyahu, and Netanyahu has complained that the delivery of American weapons has been blocked, though the US has made clear that it's only very high tonnage bombs about which they had concern about their possible use in civilian areas, which have been delayed, and other weapons are going. But Trump would back Israel to the hilt.
In fact, the bombs you mentioned was something that Biden touched upon during the debate. He said, we have to be careful what we supply to the Israelis because these bombs can't be used in densely populated areas. But on that note, Ambassador, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to ThePrint. Your inputs were hugely valuable. Thank you so much. And we'll be tracking this topic, as I'm sure you will be.
Thank you.